Hello, everyone. My name is Jacob Williams. I'm here with Dhananjay Talwar. So we're the directors of Threshold Education. We're talking today about the longer term impact of COVID-19 on education, following up on our discussion of the gradual easing of school closures last week. This session will focus more on the implications over the next few months and years. So one of the big trends that we have noticed is increasing demand for online learning, with many schools and universities moving online temporarily, perhaps even longer term. So, given that there's still are likely to be major concerns about the safety of face-to-face learning for some time to come, do you think that this is a boom period for online tuition?
Yeah, I would think so. It's a very interesting area to watch out for and to keep an eye out for at the moment. But I do think that given everything that's happened, I would say there's likely to be a trend towards online learning and towards parents preferring online tuition as well. Um, I mean, obviously, tuition is all taking place online at the moment, and many parents have found that it's actually just as accessible, just as engaging and productive as before. Yeah, would you say that that's similar to what you've experienced?
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Of course, everyone has their own personal preferences, but in general, online tuition doesn't have to be any less personalized or effective than face-to-face tutoring. In fact, it has several advantages. Of course, you can connect more easily with a tutor at any time in any place. It's also very easy to make it interactive with many online tools like BitPaper or AWW app that allow you to have lots of visual resources that are very easy to use in many ways,
Yeah,
more so than in face-to-face tuition. Um, so I think, and to some extent, I hope that actually this is going to be a trigger for a longer term move to doing a much greater proportion of our tutoring online than has been
yeah,
done in the past.
yeah, absolutely. I agree. There's very much a plethora of resources out there for online tutors who are familiar with various platforms, and they can be tailored to each specific subject as well. Say interactive whiteboards for maths,
Mm,
Google Drive documents for writing out something, say an essay, which you can then look at while
yeah,
your student is writing it.
sure.
One possible consequence is inequality as a result of this.
Right.
Um,
Um,
yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, there has been a lot of concern raised that it tends to be private schools that are providing a much more thorough and complete online schooling at the moment, whereas state schools are doing a lot less, in some cases, very little. And that's going to exacerbate the ongoing educational divide in the UK. Do you think that's a major concern?
I think it is a concern for many parents, and one could argue that online tuition will perhaps help to bridge that gap to some extent, because it's now more easily accessible for many families. Um, However, I guess some parents might still have some concerns about inequalities or possible online learning and how it might differ from learning in a classroom setting, for instance.
Yeah. Do you mean in terms of effectiveness?
Yeah, in terms of effectiveness and in terms of perhaps children not getting the face-to-face interaction that they
Hmm.
might with classmates. I don't know what you would say
Yeah,
about
so the social aspect of education, yeah, that is very important. I mean, full-time homeschoolers have existed, of course, um, well, have always existed and exist more so in other countries like the US, where I think around 2 million children are homeschooled. In the UK, it's around 90,000, but that is itself a massive increase over the last few years. And they generally find ways to provide that social stimulation. There are clubs and activities children can join. There are associations of homeschoolers who meet up just for this purpose. There are ways around that issue. Um, of course, there will still be inequality of access in any form of education, however it's provided. But in many ways, the UK is really quite behind other parts of the world in embracing online learning. In East Asia, for example, it's completely normal to have very extensive online tutoring, and there's not really this stigma attached to it. It's not really seen as a second best option.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in East Asia or significant parts of the world, it's seen as something to supplement education, or yeah, instead of a threat or to teaching in any way.
Right.
Uh, which I would argue, yeah, is a very healthy or positive outlook. Um, yeah. So, do you think that one possible way of getting around these geographical concerns, or of creating some face-to-face interaction while actually learning effectively in the current climate as well, might be following what universities are doing? So, a
Yes.
mixture of face-to-face and online learning, uh, potentially doing face-to-face in small groups and big lectures online. Or
Yeah, that's something that I think many universities have. I know Cambridge, I think we talked about last week. They've said they're going to do that, I think, next term. Other universities may do something similar. Yeah, it may be a good solution. I guess we still don't know exactly what will be safe to do in even a month's time, let alone in September, October. It may be that universities are able to operate as normal. On the other hand, there may still be a lot of students staying away from them. So really just being constantly flexible, I think, is the watchword for tutors and educational institutions alike. One concern I know a lot of universities have is that there might be, even if they are allowed to operate as normal, many students may choose to defer their places because of ongoing worries, which could have really big financial problems. How do you think universities might respond to this?
yeah, absolutely. You're right to raise it as a potential problem, because they may well see uh, their numbers of applicants dwindling for this year, and then a huge amount of applicants applying for entry next year. Um, I do think that they will have to come up with some solution for it, whether it's somehow incentivizing more people to apply this year, or simply saying, look, we're going to cap the amounts that can apply next year. So if you're trying to defer, don't do it, because that's unfortunately not a practical solution. It
Yeah.
can't work. Um, yeah, I would see those as the main possible solutions for universities. So many people of this cohort who might have been thinking about going to university in a few months uh, will be feeling anxious. Do you think that there will be wider
Hmm.
implications for them, and what can this cohort do to cope?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a year group who are going to have a very disrupted education, with exams not taking place for many of them, and possibly not even having the opportunity to resit those exams later, and then possible disruptions to university as well. Yeah. I suppose one possible optimistic way of looking at this is it's just the beginning of a transition to a much more decentralized and fluid method of learning, incorporating aspects of online teaching, but not necessarily exclusively so. So, in a way, perhaps it's almost like, perhaps not much of a consolation necessarily, but it's some kind of experiment almost, testing the waters for this new system that might be coming into place. Um, One final thing I just wanted to raise was um, the issue, yeah, the issue of regulation, because as we of course know, um, currently private tuition in the UK is not very actively regulated by the government. To the extent that this becomes more prominent as an alternative to full-time education, online homeschooling with tutors, which is a very much a growing sector of private tuition, perhaps we're likely to see more government intervention in the industry. Do you think that is a concern, or indeed an opportunity?
I would see it more as an opportunity, mainly. I think if the UK does head, say, in the direction of the US, which we've already seen has a very different model of private tuition, where there is heavy regulation and it's very much a professional industry.
Yeah.
Um, Perhaps not quite to the same extent as lawyers or doctors, or but certainly it's a recognized professional industry. I do think that there's potentially now an opportunity for the UK to head in that direction, and I think we should embrace that personally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true. So certainly some kind of professional standards might end up being imposed. I mean, there are concerns that if something like this were to happen, it would be too restrictive. I mean, one of the advantages of tuition right now is that you don't need qualified teacher status to be a tutor, which doesn't necessarily give you the same skill. It's more about classroom management. So, um, yeah, it would be important to make sure that I think tutors are represented in the development of any kind of standards or regulations that are put in place. Um, but yeah, certainly it has the potential to accelerate the professionalization of the industry, which is something I think we would welcome. Um, well, thank you very much for listening to us today. If you have any questions, please do comment underneath this video, and you can get in touch with us via our website. And wish you all the best in your education over this confusing time as schools gradually return. Thank you very much.
Thank you.